People are in the room. Great, amazing. Welcome, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon on a Wednesday afternoon. It is the most humpy time. That sounds really weird. It is the worst time of hump day, I always think. Wednesday afternoon is exactly when you want to go to sleep. So well done for making it, everyone. Okay, so we're going to start now. Okay, so I'm here to talk about self-empathy, how I have used it in my own career to just know more about myself and what makes me tick so that I can make better career decisions. So this slide here is basically an encapsulation of in 4 words of my career history. And I really do feel, well, at the time, I really did feel like a failure. And then I showed myself a little bit of self-empathy and then made it to where I am now, which, you know, is just, you know, a fraction of the path that I'm sure I'm due to take at some point as life goes on. So I am here to reassure you. I'm here to show you that you don't have to know what you want to do right now. You don't have to know much about yourself right now. If you don't feel like you know a lot about yourself, that is what I'm here to show you, is that how you can start having a bit more introspect, how you can learn more about yourself through my own journey. I'm going to show you how I started to get a bit more introspect and learn a bit more about myself, and hopefully you can emulate that and yeah, as I said before, make better career decisions. Okay, so this is my journey in 4 chapters, and the big lessons that I learned along the way that helped me refine myself to get to the point where I am now, where I do feel every decision that I make, whether it is actually to do with my career or my social life or my love life or anything like that, I do feel like I know enough about myself to know what I should lean into and what I should lean away from. Okie dokie, so we're going to start with chapter 1. This is me, age 19. Would you believe it? I know I still look that age, but sadly no more. I'm over a decade older than that now. So that's me after leaving school. Okay, so we're going to go back to the age of 19. So chapter 1, Sam fails at uni. So I started out, if we go a little bit further back, I started out as an underachieving, stupid child. I was labelled stupid by a number of my teachers. I had a reputation for distracting the rest of my peers in a classroom. I hated reading. I still hate reading. Just so you know, any other reader haters out there, recognise. I hated sitting silently at a desk. I hated being told what to do by adults. That's pretty much a summary of me as a child. So I didn't do that well at school. I'm not academic and I was never going to be. The only time where I was sitting quietly and not distracting other people, that was my go-to habit, by the way, just trying to distract everyone else around me. The only time where I wasn't doing that was when I was in the art room at school, where ironically, that's when the only time where I was being told to express myself as much as I wanted, that's actually when I shut up the most. So you can tell from that I was quite a creative child. I needed attention and I had a problem with authority. So I was kind of a textbook, I suppose, in a classroom environment, a problem child. So when I was in high school and I was told to choose what my next steps were, I really struggled with that, because the only option that I'd ever been told about was uni, which is kind of an extension of academia. So I knew in the back of my mind that it was never going to work for me. I didn't know any other option, so I didn't know what else to do but apply. So I applied to art school. So this picture is me and my best friend, now co-founder, getting our A-level results. So I got the results that I wanted. And I applied to art school, but I failed to get in. I actually got rejected from 3 art schools. It was the first crushing failure for me, because it was the only subject that I'd ever felt a connection with at school, but it had outwardly rejected me 3 times over. So at that point, I was like, what do I do now? I have no idea where to go next. The only option I've been told is uni, so I'm going to reapply to uni. I applied to law school through clearing, and I did get in. I went and I hated it so much that I left before the end of the year. So this was the second crushing failure for me. In my mind, I had fallen short of every hope and expectations that the adults had around me. I was officially in the bracket of alternative career path, and I had no idea what that meant. But I did take away two things from this experience. So this is where my journey first began. This is where my introspect journey first began, my self-empathy journey, which is listening to what my mind was telling me and my heart was telling me, and being like, actually, what everyone else is telling me to do, is that really how I feel inside? So I began to realize that there were two things that I needed to lean either into or away from, which is, one, I'm never going to be a corporate. That was just not, it's not my world. I tried being a lawyer, and I would argue that's one of the most creative ways of working in the corporate world, because it's all about arguments and creative problem solving. It just wasn't for me. It's not what I was going to be about. And then second of all, I wasn't going to be able to go to uni. I tried, they rejected me, and that is the way that it is. So obviously I'm not destined, I'm not intended to go to uni, I'm not designed for a university world. So my big question was, what else is there? So I could move forward with these lessons. I needed to do something in the creative world. My path towards it wasn't going to be through uni. And that was enough. Having that vague direction, having that vague understanding of what was working for me and what wasn't, it was enough for me to work out what I needed to do next. So what is next? If you can't go to uni, you've got to go and get a job, right? Because you've got to pay those bills. So chapter 2, Sam goes and gets a job. So when I knew I was going to leave uni, when I was at law school, I started applying to literally every job under the sun, because that's what I needed to do. I needed to be able to eat. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So this activity was just a combination of searching random industries that sounded fun, plus the word job. That's basically my process. So I knew that I wanted an office job, but I knew that everyone was going to be applying to the same jobs on Indeed, Monster, and all the other main jobs boards. I deduced that if I went to the more obscure corners of the internet, then I would have less competition and I could make myself stand out from the crowd. So I applied to jobs on Twitter, LinkedIn, which wasn't as big at the time, by the way. This was like a decade ago, more than a decade ago, sadly now. Random company websites I would stumble across. I even made notes of the company names that I liked the logos of as I walked down a street. And then I sent them emails asking for a job. So it was actually Gumtree that came through in the end. After applying to about 1 million jobs, I landed a job via Gumtree for £16,000 a year at a tiny PR agency with 4 other people working there, because those are the kinds of companies that post jobs on obscure corners of the internet. I landed a job in a tiny business that couldn't afford to pay for a job advert. So I didn't know what PR was. Oh no, we're not there yet. So I didn't really know what PR was, but it ended up being fine. I wasn't in love with it, but I did not like it at all. But I was in love with working in a tiny team. So here are the things that I learned. So when I got my first job at this PR company, I started to pay attention to the fact that I was really enjoying certain things. It wasn't necessarily the job, but the environment, the activities, like, you know, the processes that I was doing. I really started to pay attention to what was working for me and what wasn't. So I loved working in a tiny team. I loved being scrappy and problem solving, thinking outside of the box. And I loved being part of conversations that my bosses were having because they were sitting opposite me and there's no way that I couldn't hear them. So I really enjoyed listening into those decision-making conversations that they were having. I liked having an understanding of how you run a business. So although I was only managing our client social media accounts, I did watch the decision makers around me doing sales, client management, marketing, everything a company CEO does on a very minor level. I had a front row seat to that process and heard all of their discussions. So I learned from this experience that being this close to the people that run a business was the exact environment that I wanted to be in. So this is like the second of the big, I guess, refinement bits of knowledge that I started picking up along the way. Like the environment that I worked in, I absolutely thrived in. It didn't matter about the job. I was like, this is what works for me. I had zero interest in working for a big company or a sexy brand name because I valued the intensity of learning in a startup environment far more than the security of a massive name business. All of the damage that school had done to me when they told me that I was stupid, that totally vanished in this environment. School had told me that I was stupid. They told me that I'd needed to be good at reading. They told me that I needed to be obedient and academic. All that went out the window in the startup world. It's such a fast-paced, intense and agile, flexible environment. It's more about doing all of those things than it is about staying in your lane and being a good little girl and making sure that you are doing what you are told. It's properly hands-on, and it was full of other people who felt exactly the same way as me, which was so exciting because I was surrounded by people with the same mindset, and I could start to recognize in them the stuff that I was also feeling. They were all thriving in this environment, and I could look at that from the outside as well as feeling it from the inside out. Amazing. I'm going to answer some questions after I finish the talk. Okay, yes, questions, please do put them in the Q&A. Okay, so this is it. I found the kind of environment that I wanted to work in, and that, my friends, ignited a flame inside me to want to be in control of my own business. So here are some photos of me. Sorry, this isn't me, but at the company that I worked in called Decoded, which was the next startup, the second startup that I worked in. So we're going to get onto that in a second. So chapter 3, Sam becomes a freelancer. So after a year and a bit of working in PR, I went on to work at another startup in a similar environment. So this is the other startup that I worked in. Again, super young, super fast paced, really exciting. They didn't care about the grades that you got at school. They were like, do you have the right attitude? Do you have the right work ethic? Do you have the creativity and the problem solving attitude that we are looking for? I was like, yes, absolutely. And I loved working at that company. I was the second ever employee that they hired. And by the time I left, there were 50 of them. So I saw growth in this business. I learned so much along the way. And I honestly don't think, I was just thriving in this environment. So, okay, so that business that I just showed you, this one taught people how to code. That was the whole focus of the business. And it was fully integrated into the tech startup scene, which was super fun. And it was kind of at peak Silicon Valley startup period, which I'm sure you're all too young to remember. But it was quite a glamorous time. It was when Facebook started becoming a thing. It was when Google really, was in the like peak of its, I guess, money making areas. Tech startups were getting lots and lots of money. There were lots of big, exciting names there. I was kind of at this company that was, very much attached to that world, which was really cool. But I didn't really care about code, considering that the center of the business was focused around teaching people how to code. I didn't really care about that. Again, I was leaning into that idea that I loved the environment, but how long was I able to love the environment for without also loving what I do as in terms of as an everyday job? So I started to listen to my internal compass being like, okay, I love the environment, but actually, is what I do any fun? Am I really enjoying that? So after a few years, as the company got bigger, I kind of fell out of love with that whole kind of situation. And I got itchy feet because I was like, I do want to love what I do as a job on an everyday basis. So 2 things happened around this time that were game changers for me. Number 1, I started earning some extra cash on the side as a videographer. So I'd picked up a camera at some point at work, because that's what happens when you're in a startup environment. They're like, we need someone to record some content. And I'm like, I'll do it. And then they're like, okay, because we have no one else to do it. And again, that was the environment that I thrived in. So I picked up a camera at some point at work, and with literally no experience and every degree of arrogance, I decided to make social media videos for people who I thought needed it. So the videos were awful, but they were super cheap and people bought them. So this was like a little side hustle that I had. But then the second thing, the relevance of this picture that you're seeing in front of you, was that my best friend May, who had been working as an accountant at PwC, you saw her in a picture earlier, us picking up our A-level results together. She'd been working as an accountant at PwC in Bristol for the last few years. She finally got transferred to London, where I lived. We were in the same city for the first time in 5 years, and we were so excited about this because May wasn't enjoying her job either. In fact, May had actually wanted to work in fashion, but she hadn't been allowed to do it because it wasn't a serious career option. So we were both, obviously I'd wanted to be an artist, the art world had rejected me. So we were both super bitter about the fact that we'd never been accepted into the creative worlds that we wanted to be part of. May fashion, me art. So we would chat about how unhappy we were with our actual jobs when we saw each other, and we eventually agreed to quit and go and work for ourselves. So we decided that the best way that we could immediately make money was freelancing as videographers. I was already charging for it. Yes, they were awful videos, but I was already technically making money out of it. So it felt like something that we could actually do on a bigger scale. I was already charging for it, and I could teach May how to use a camera and edit relatively quickly. Sure, why not? So we quit. And all of a sudden, here we are in this new landscape of work without the shackles of the commute or the strict routine of working as an employee. We could beat to the sound of our own drum. However, then very quickly, the realization of having to make rent next month kicks in, and you have bills to pay and you want to go and meet your friends for a coffee, but you can't afford the bus journey to even get to where they are. After being a little too relaxed than we should have been about our cash flow, suddenly we had to hustle. So we're technically freelancers at this point. We are videographers. We're making zero money. We're like, how do we make money really, really quickly? How do we get lots of videography clients very, very fast? Again, this is the third big lesson that I learned about my skills, my abilities, what I should lean into, what I should lean away from. And it is the sales process, the putting yourself out there and making shaking that confidence so that you can put yourself into a sales position and make sales very, very, very quickly. We're creative problem solving at this point. So we spammed Eventbrite, asking every event if they wanted a videographer. We spammed Instagram, asking every single brand if they wanted a corporate video. We spammed Twitter, tweeting everyone if they wanted social media content. We had no shame, and we copied and pasted our cold message so many times that we got banned for spamming on a number of those platforms. It was really bad. But we did start to get responses, and we were super creative about like the messages that we were sending, the different platforms that we were using, the people, the targeting that the people that we were targeting. Like, this was absolutely one of our biggest learnings, I think, as business owners, is that we are inherently hugely creative problem solvers. Give us a problem, we can absolutely come up with a creative, out of the box thinking solution, and it really does work every single time. So this is where we really learned that that is a skill that we can lean into, and it really gives us a huge reward as well internally. So we started to get lots of responses. Women-led businesses and women-run events that we'd been targeting, again, thinking outside of the box, they were very interested in hiring 2 female videographers. It fit with the ethos of the events that they were running or the businesses that they run. So 1 booking turned into 5, 5 into 10, 10 into 20, and then all of a sudden our freelance business is growing, as did our abilities, our experience, and our prices. So we're officially learning on the job at this point. This is one of the first ever shoots that we did. So weirdly, we were actually taking, so we messaged a load of women who were basically doing like different photo shoots and things like that. And we were like, do you want photos of the photo shoot happening so that you can have social media content to put up? Like, that was one of our creative problem solving angles that we were trying to sell, and it really did work. This is one of the first gigs that we ever got. So we learned that you have to experiment and put yourself out there in order to yield the results that you want. If you do want business, you have to go out and get it, and it was one of our biggest strengths as a duo. So we had more exciting business idea, however, that we had on the back burner for a while now, and we were itching to get it off the ground. So here's some of the other events that we ran, women-led events. Yeah, that's basically just like a load of pictures of us taking photos of events. We even went to the Facebook offices and interviewed the CEO of Facebook at that point. So that was good fun. Anyway, chapter 4. So we've gone through, failed at uni, we went, got a job, Sam's got a job. Then we went, Sam becomes a freelancer. And then finally, this is the chapter that I'm currently in now, Sam becomes an entrepreneur. So all of the learnings, all of the self-empathy that I've shown myself throughout this point have led me to this moment in time. So May and I grew tired of being videographers. It wasn't our passion. We were able to be creative, don't get me wrong, and we were able to work with each other every day, and we were able to work in our dream environment. However, we weren't passionate about the specifics of making videos. So this is a refinement, as you can tell over time. We were passionate about helping young people feel like they actually could get a career in the creative industries. We were never told that we could when we were younger. It was a passion that we kept coming back to and we kept talking about, a problem that we had experienced ourselves that we really felt an urge to solve. So throughout the entirety of all of those different chapters that I was referring to earlier, all of that time, May and I had permanently been revisiting this conversation throughout time, being like, but we really care about the fact that we didn't get into the creative industries. We were told that we couldn't, we were rejected. And we know that young people are experiencing the same problem that we were experiencing back then, still today. This is a problem that we want to solve. We just don't know how we're going to solve it. And we don't know what that looks like yet. And this is the point, chapter 4, where that actually becomes a reality. That becomes an actual business. So we decided to test the waters to see if we could tell young people about their career options in the creative industries. Were they even interested? We felt that this was a problem that needed to be solved, but do the young people think that this is a problem that needs to be solved? How many young people were out there who were experiencing the same problem that we had experienced? So we decided, in order to test the waters, to put on a free careers fair about the creative industries. So we committed to funding the event through our video freelancing work. So we were lucky enough at that point to be making enough money through the videography to be able to fund Eric, the event. And we didn't have a venue, but we did decide on a date, and we posted a vague, very vague, save the date on Eventbrite to see if anyone was interested. So this is the business that I run now, but in its first ever iteration. This was the first ever image that we put on Eventbrite from this test event. So, I mean, if anyone has seen the Eric branding now, you will see that the logo is the same, but we don't have any of this nonsense around it anymore. But this is Eric in its first iteration. So we put this up on Eventbrite. We had such low hopes for it. We were like, I'm sure that no one is going to sign up for it. We haven't even got a venue. We've got a vague date, but that's kind of it. Within 24 hours, we had 100 people signing up for the event. And within a week, we had 300 people. So we knew at this point that we'd had something. We knew that we'd hit upon something that there was a clear market for, and this could be something big. So by the day of the event, we had 2,000 signups, and companies like ITV, Disney, BBC, and Warner Music were taking part. It had a name, obviously Eric Fest. We had dozens of live creative performances. I don't know if anyone knows who Munya Chihuahua is, but he hosted our first ever event. He's like now a big name TikTok star. So that was the birth of Eric, and we absolutely loved it. We were in an environment that we were in control of, which was amazing. So that startup environment that I was talking to you about earlier, like I was absolutely in my element here because it was my startup. It was my environment that I was in control of, which was wonderful. I got to work with my best friend, May. I was doing something that I really, really cared about, and I still care about. I am obsessed with this problem. I am obsessed with helping young people get into the creative industries. And so we are at this point obsessed with what we're doing. And we did 16 more of these events, averaging 500 people attending each event. So here's just a selection of the different kind of images from our events. Obviously, as you can see, this sign, oh my God, we we had to cut that sign out ourselves. It was absolutely nuts. From cardboard, it was a disaster. Anyway, okay, so we built up a mailing list and a following of about 200,000 young people who wanted us to help them discover the world of creative careers. And we were working with the biggest creative companies to help them connect with new generations of talent. So the event snowballed into an app. So we pivoted over the pandemic. Obviously, an events model is not a great model to do during a global pandemic. So we actually pivoted. So that's another story for another time. But that's what we do now. So we're now a pure tech company. We're an app called the Eric app that young people can access for free from anywhere at any time. The purpose of the app is to help young people find helpful creative career stuff so that they can get experience in the creative industries and a foot in the door in the working world. So there's loads of stuff from like mentoring schemes, training initiatives, access programs, internships, apprenticeships, all of that stuff. It's all on the app. So please do download it. However, that's not the purpose of this talk, so I'm not going to bore you with that anymore. The purpose of this talk is all about, this is what the app looks like. There we go. The purpose of this talk is all about making sure that you are giving yourself a little bit of self-empathy. So paying attention to the things that you enjoy, the things that you don't, asking yourself why, understanding, being like coherent of your environment and I guess your reaction to things. I would say, I'm going to come back to these actually. Hang on, let me just quickly. We've got some questions in the Q&A as well. So super quick, here are some things that really helped me gain self-empathy that I think every young person should have a look at themselves. Just literally go and Google these things, go and explore. There's 3 things. Okay, if I had the context around these things is if I had known about these earlier, then I would have been able to identify and lean into my strengths and what I enjoyed rather than trying to fit myself into someone else's mold or the expectations of what someone else's definition of success is. So I highly recommend looking at these things. Okay. Learning styles. What is your learning style? Go and Google this and then have a look at the different learning styles out there. I was told that the only way that I should be learning is by reading. Actually, it turns out that the style of learning best for me is listening. So podcasts, for example, I consume so much information through podcasts. It takes me about 500 hours to read one line of a book. So identifying what your learning style is really important. It will help you progress in that workplace. It will help you understand more about how you can work more effectively, how you should use that in your career path, but also outside of your career. It's just great in terms of self-development. Second thing, there's only 2 things here, sorry. The second thing is, what type of intelligence are you? We are only ever told that there is one type of intelligence at school, which is academia. There are actually 8 different intelligences. So you will be more than one as well. Identify what kind of intelligence you are and then lean into the ones that you identify as being your strengths. So for me, I mean, you might want to get someone else to also have verify yours. For me, I think linguistic, however, some people might contradict that somewhat. But there are so many different intelligences. This is also, there's another theory out there that there are even more than this. But if you just allow yourself some time, give yourself time to learn more about you, how you consume information, how you interact with other people, what your intelligence strengths are, it allows you to make much better career decisions. And all of the stuff that I've accumulated throughout my career history is basically a kind of expansion of what these things are, the intelligences and the learning styles. So yeah, so that's kind of it from me talk wise. I've actually got I've only got 5 more minutes, guys, because I'm supposed to go to another meeting. So I am going to answer just a couple of these questions really quickly. How do you learn to better understand yourself? What would be your tips or practices to find what you love and get paid for doing it? Again, I would have a look at the learning styles, at the intelligences. I would also have a look at the variety of different careers that exist out there. I mean, there are so many more than you guys would think. For me, obviously, my whole purpose is spreading awareness about careers in the creative industries. I would highly recommend looking at our the Eric website, where we actually do have a microsite for schools, where you can learn more about careers in the 16 different creative industries. And it literally caters to everyone and anyone with any skill set, with any personality type, with any learning style, with anything, has a place in the creative industry. So I would highly recommend having a look there. It's much bigger than you think. There are 16 different industries. It's not just music, singing and painting. So I'd say that. What do you do if everyone around you, parents and teachers, are telling you to go to university but you don't want to? Consume as much information as you can online about people, hearing from people who didn't go to university. We get given this narrative, and I experienced this a lot when I was a kid. We get given this narrative that university is the only aspirational career option out there. It's not. TikTok is amazing for spreading information from people who didn't go to university, that you can basically find people's first-hand accounts of how they have made it, just become a very fully functioning, successful human being without having to go to university. It is not the only option. I'm also living proof of that. It's great to see you looking back on your journey and the resilience you clearly had to show. Can you elaborate on your hardest and darkest time of being an entrepreneur? Hardest and darkest time was when we were trying to raise investment. It is so hard. Weirdly, again, we get given this narrative, I think, about how a business is only successful if you raise investment. The most successful businesses and the ones that are most impressive are the ones that haven't had to raise investment, because they have a product that is so successful and so useful that people are already paying for it, so they don't need to raise investment. But I think there's this strange narrative that we always get given, which is, the more investment that you've raised, the more PR you tend to get, and the more people are like, oh my God, isn't it so amazing how they raised like £5 million of investment? Do you know what's more impressive? If they make £5 million in sales when they don't actually have to ask someone else for money. So that is a very blunt and very abbreviated version of, I guess, kind of the investment situation that you can get yourself into. It is so hard to raise investment. We have raised investment now, but it is a lot. You get a lot of no's. There is a lot of rejection, no matter what people tell you about when they raised investment. Everyone has had to endure a number of substantial no's and hard no's as well. So I would say that's my darkest time. Advice given to a 14, 15-year-old who has an entrepreneurial spirit: start now. You guys have the added benefit, or the benefit of being able to access the internet at such a young age, and you can start a business now. We didn't have that when we were younger, or I didn't have that when I was younger. And honestly, you can show you can literally start practicing being an entrepreneur now. There's nothing stopping you, really. So anyway, I think I've probably spoken enough, guys. I think that's all the questions answered. Presentation done. Let's scroll back up to the top. There we go. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed. Lovely to have you. I don't know how to sign off.